Today's video is brought to you in association with the book The Nativity, A Critical Examination by Jonathan M.S. Pearce, myself. This is a book to which I am presently writing a sister publication, The Resurrection, A Critical Examination of the Easter Story. So please grab hold of this book. The link will be in the description below. As ever, question everything and put your comments down below after you've watched this video. Hi there, and welcome to another A Tippling Philosopher video. I am going to talk to you today about the resurrection of Jesus. I am presently writing a book, working title of The Resurrection, A Critical Analysis of the Easter Story, looking really critically at the accounts within the Bible of the resurrection of Jesus as some form of God-man spirit who is incarnated on earth and dies in some sense for the atonement of sins for humanity, a humanity which he himself has designed and created, and somehow needs payment for the sins that he has designed into the creation. And so sacrifices himself in some way to pay for those sins. Christians disagree on exactly how that works. There are lots of different theories of atonement. And resurrects, appears to some of his disciples, and then disappears up into heaven to sit on his own right hand for eternity in heaven. So leaves you wondering whether that's really the sacrifice it's cracked up to be. But irrespective of that, I'm going to talk very briefly about the empty tomb, because I read over a decade ago this fantastic book called The Empty Tomb, Jesus Beyond the Grave, edited by Robert Price and Geoffrey Lauder, and it has loads of chapters by loads of great sort of atheist thinkers and writers. And I remember reading it all that time ago and thinking certain parts are really dry. I mean, didn't quite understand the sheer brilliance of the book, I suppose. I probably wasn't working with enough knowledge of Christianity and the Bible and philosophy that I have now. And so therefore, I really had to work hard at certain chapters and didn't quite piece it all together. In writing the book that I'm writing now, it's all coming together, an absolute treat. I mean, the book's writing itself. It's just, I'm really enjoying writing the book, to be fair. But I've had not a sudden realization. I've always realized it was important, but I really see the importance now of the empty tomb for the Christian. And I now realize quite why people like William Lane Craig argue so vehemently for the historicity of the empty tomb. Because, we know from Paul's writing that pretty much every other mainstream Christian in the world, that the resurrection is massively important to Christianity, to professing faith in Christianity. So without the belief, and this is in his letters in Corinthians, without belief in the death and rising of Jesus, you don't get an atonement. And if you don't have an atonement, you don't really have any point in Jesus, okay? And I suppose it's like a sudden realization of that obvious fact that without the resurrection and really the death of Jesus, then you have no point to Jesus and you have no point to Christianity. So you take the atonement back to the resurrection back to the crucifixion back to Jesus' life, and so on and so forth. So that's pretty obvious. But again, what I've come to realize recently is the huge importance of the empty tomb narrative. So without the empty tomb, there is no account of the resurrection. So the empty tomb is the evidence for Christ's resurrection, and thus the evidence for the atonement of Jesus, and thus Christianity as a whole kind of depends on it. It's one of the foundational bricks for the truth, or the historical truth, of Christianity. Because if you didn't have an empty tomb, then you could just say, well, Jesus didn't really resurrect. People just had visions. People always have hallucinations. You know, there's a body. Here's a tomb. Here's a body. There you go. As a Jew arguing against your early claims, here's Jesus' tomb. Look, there's a skeleton, or there's a body, or something. So the empty tomb is a really crucial part of that narrative. Interestingly, it doesn't feature at all in the earliest writings, that of Paul. I think it's a later complete embellishment. And I think Paul actually originally believed, like Richard Carrier, I believe that Paul thought that there was a spiritual resurrection of Jesus, and actually the body stayed anyway. So there were these differing views at the time, but it was later believed that actually, no, there must have been a general kind of, Jesus was the first of the general resurrection, this kind of Jewish idea that there was going to be a general resurrection of the dead, and Jesus was the first. And the evidence of this is the empty tomb and the stories of the empty tomb. And that's why people like Gary Habermas and William Lane Craig spend so much time arguing for the evidential basis of the resurrection through the empty tomb. And if you can poke holes in the empty tomb narrative and show it to be historically highly dubious for a whole bunch of reasons, which I think I'll do in later videos, then really the resurrection narrative starts falling apart like a house of cards. So I understand why people like Craig argue that they do, and so therefore I think it's the job of skeptics to then say, I understand you're arguing vehemently for an empty tomb because the empty tomb is crucial for you, so therefore let's unpick the empty tomb. And hence that book, and kind of my book as well, is pulling that together along with a whole load of other ideas. Anyway, there you go. The importance of the empty tomb. There wasn't one, but we'll talk about that another time.